Hey guys, Melvin here. Welcome to the attic. We're going to be reading a story from the RPG Horror Stories subreddit. This one was posted by user Zatari. It's about a changeling PC who goes from 0 to 100 on the meltdown scale, and a party that's put in a sticky spot. By the way, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to know when I upload new videos. Without further ado, let's check it out. I want to preface this post by stating that everyone involved in this game is friends outside of D&D. The events of the story make it really hard to just cut off the problem player in question. Any advice on how to move forward is greatly appreciated. I'll start with giving an intro to our important characters for this story. First, we have our DM, who's a good role player and has a very well fleshed out world. Next, we have two. They'll be known as Changeling and Changeling's GF. Changeling is a changeling sorcerer with the actor feat who is min-maxed essentially to never fail at persuasion or deception. Changeling's GF is pretty self-explanatory. We have Kenku, who is probably the best role player among us and does a wonderful job playing his character well. Kenku is probably one of the most fun characters I've played with to date. My character really doesn't matter in this encounter. Leading up to the main event of the story, Changeling has essentially been the main face of the party. Most RP and dialogue ends up going through Changeling, even if it's a side quest focused around another character. It wasn't just RP hogging. He would genuinely get anxious or upset anytime his character would have any risk of harm. I'm talking simple combat encounters. Initially, our DM intended to create a world that would encourage a diverse party of lineages. If we went to one land, it would be better to have a race that fit in with the people of that land. Obviously, you can see where this is going. Whenever we would go to a new location, Changeling would shape change into a member of that land's primary race. He would then go around and engage in general main character syndrome shenanigans. Keep in mind, a lot of our other party members are rarely getting a chance to shine, even in areas where they logically should. Eventually, DM decides that he's probably not going to let a player use a changeling again, and needs a solution for our beloved changeling. Now for the fateful encounter. Our party catches word that someone is hunting us down as retribution for an NPC that got killed a few sessions back. Coincidentally, that past encounter resulted in Changeling getting hit by a moonbeam and reverting. The deceased NPC's remaining family caught wind of this and hired a company of Changeling hunters. In the end, the blame was placed on the Changeling for the death of the NPC. Not unjustly. Long story. Our whole party is approached by a member of the hunters and told that we have 10 days. My character and a couple of other non-changeling characters go to talk with the leader of the changeling hunters in a tavern. Long story short, he's an Oath of Vengeance paladin who vowed revenge on those who deceive others for personal gain, after his king was killed and replaced by, surprise, an evil changeling. Seemed like a pretty compelling and interesting character to me. I doubt my character would have been okay with killing this guy just because someone hired him to deal with a changeling who murdered someone. We continue the conversation and get to the incident, convincing Paladin that the death wasn't really on us and try to say that Changeling was a decent person. This next bit's important. A while back, we did a side quest and got a bell that summons a magical servant. He's just Mr. Deeds. We eventually learned more about Deeds and find out that he's essentially cursed as an unfeeling slave. So, Changeling, who owns the bell, promised to set him free one day. In our conversation with Paladin, he brings this Deeds situation up, asking, how can Changeling be a decent person if he has a slave? We eventually get to a point where we agree on something with the Paladin. If Changeling sets Deeds free after our battle with the hunters, as he claimed he would, that would be proof that Changeling is a good guy and he will stop pursuing us. Kenku agrees to steal the bell and set Deeds free if Changeling decides not to. We agree that Paladin would only send a small force of subordinates on the agreed day as a test of Changeling's character to see what happens to Deeds after the battle. If Changeling goes back on his word, we agreed to side with Paladin. We did not expect to have to do this, as we hoped Changeling would remember to fulfill his end of the deal. We get through the battle, and Changeling never explicitly states, "I will now set Mr. Deeds free." We wait for him to do this. The DM even gives him subtle hints and prompts him with, "What do you want to do next?" It just never happened. He then states that he intends to go after Paladin. We get to the tavern and Changeling goes to Paladin's room. We are behind him. Paladin gives him a speech and states that a little birdie, Kenku, has made good on Changeling's unfulfilled promise. Changeling, immediately jumping out of character, starts freaking out, accusing DM of trying to fuck him on this. He claimed that he stated that the moment combat ended, Deeds would be free. After Changeling starts literally crying, DM lets Changeling rewind to just after the combat and retcons in him freeing Deeds. Big emotional moment. Session ends without going back to Paladin. Changeling's GF is consoling Changeling as he's still in tears. Even after getting his way with the retcon, we feel the need to explain the situation to him and told him what the plans were. He immediately flips shit and starts pointing his finger at Kenku, screaming, "This is personal," and "You don't trust me as a person, do you?" Keep in mind, these two guys are super close friends and roommates. Changeling starts getting his things together to get up and storm out. So DM stops him and says, "Let's talk out the problems we have right now." They talk things out, but it's clear that Changeling doesn't really see the issue in how deeply invested he is in this character. Eventually they leave and we're left wondering what to do about this situation, as well as how to make it clear to Kenku that he didn't do anything wrong, and that we all love how he plays his character. TLDR. Changeling with main character syndrome requires weekly power fantasy as therapy, and can't separate players from characters. We value him deeply as a friend, but hate what he's doing in D&D. I'm starting to see some distinguishing traits with main character syndrome players. Getting excited about the story and hogging the spotlight a little is one thing. It's likely something a lot of us have done at some point. But you eventually learn to ease up by reading the room and paying attention to the other players. What separates main character syndrome in my mind is what happens when that spotlight is taken away, or, as is often the case, ripped away from someone who's built their tent there. These players tend to crumple into wounded fawns, wildly accusing the rest of the party of turning on them, as if they're some mad king lashing out at their advisors while their kingdom burns in the distance. The scenario with the Oath of Vengeance Paladin and the Forever Butler seemed rather elaborate, but it was still interesting to the game's story. And to be fair, I can see how Changeling got upset about the others at the table planning some kind of moral test for them. But I'm sure we can mostly agree that having a meltdown probably isn't the best way to deal with that. I'd say having a conversation and presenting the Changeling player with the issues everyone else is having might have been the best way to handle the situation from the start. Though judging by this story, that might have also been difficult. However, the players would have had the benefit of it not feeling like an in-game conspiracy. Once again, it looks like open discussion is the best way to communicate. Alright everyone, that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me here in the attic. And take care of yourselves out there. This is Melvin, in the attic, signing out.